This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Okay, good morning. I'm Lisa Calvin, and I'm an enforcement analyst with the State Department of Health Long-Term Care. So I'm the one, or there's actually two of us that will be sending out all the surveys from the facilities. We will send them to you by email, and you'll have the letter, the enforcement letter, and all the attachments, the state forms 2567s, and we'll request a POC if one is needed. We're going to start off today with enforcement procedures for specialized facilities. Last time I was here, we had some technical difficulties, and so we did. You guys couldn't hear out there in internet land. So we're going to start with this. I have provided in the packet an enforcement, I can't remember what it's called, but it's an ICFI ID, basically a cheat sheet. It's just a Word document. And you can refer to that, and that is very handy because it tells you all of the tag numbers that are considered conditions of participation, and we'll get into that. Explains just real briefly some good information on there. So enforcement procedures for specialized facilities. See if I can get it to. You work at an ICFID. The term once known as ICFMR facilities changed to ICFID, although I know that some facilities that have been around forever still have that ICFMR stuck in their vocabulary. So individuals who are intellectually disabled is what IID stands for. And these are intermediate care facilities for individuals who are intellectually disabled. That's what we're talking about. That changed effective July 16, 2012. So at that date, after that date, you work in an intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disability, or an ICFI-ID. But that's not all, of course, because there's always more. There are no more limited time agreements, no more certification expiration dates, and no more automatic cancellation dates for participation in those programs. Previously, you had to basically reapply for your certificate in order to keep it. So it's a little bit different now. Medicaid certification continues until it is canceled. And that means as long as you are in, as long as you have met the conditions of participation and do not exceed your termination date based on that, you will remain in certification. Any sanction included in the state plan can be implemented, and it's all or nothing. You're either certified or you're not in this system. Surveys are to be done every 12 months on a statewide basis with a maximum interval of 15 months for an individual facility. Now, you guys know that COVID changed that. So all surveys are back up and going again. So if you haven't seen surveyors in a long time for a recertification or what we call standard survey, and it's been 15 months or more, you might as well plan on seeing them soon. Okay, so stay up to date. The Code of Federal Regulations, the CFR, has been revised and the revisions have been published. I do not have printed copies for participation, but you can get on there and print them, or just get the link so you can have it at your fingertips at any time from a computer or smartphone. Electronic versions of the CFR are available and up to date, and I didn't change this date in here, but they keep them up to date. So go to the www.ecfr.gov, and they will have the most up-to-date version of the CFR. In order to be certified, an ICF ID in order to be certified, an ICF ID must be in compliance with all conditions of participation. Looks like there's a word left out of that one. I'll have to fix that. So conditions of participation. But what if there is a condition out? Now these, if you guys need to refer to them, there is a list of them on that little Word document cheat sheet that I gave you. What if there's a condition out? A condition out or a condition not met is the same thing. If a condition is not met, then OSDH will initiate a termination of the Medicaid certification effective within 90 days of the survey exit. So if you have one of those conditions as a tag on your survey, your enforcement letter that you receive along with your deficiencies will tell you that your Medicaid certification will terminate after 90 days. So you've got to get that condition back into participation, or you got to get it met so you can continue your certification. The only way to forestall termination of the Medicaid agreement is to bring the condition of participation back into compliance before the termination date. If the COP is met on the revisit, the termination will be halted and certification is going to continue uninterrupted. State licensure penalties. Possibility of penalties under Oklahoma Nursing Home Care Act. Gives you the reference there, but it includes deny, refuse to renew, or suspend or revoke a license. This is covered under that. There can be a ban on future admissions to the facility. There can be administrative penalties, and that means civil money penalties. You can have a conditional license. Sometimes the condition can be that there's a condition if like somebody takes receivership of the facility, or maybe that you can continue as long as you replace your DON or your administrator. Those are very, very, they don't happen very often. And I don't know that I've seen that recently in ICF. For willful violations, OSDH may request Oklahoma Healthcare Authority to withhold vendor payments due to the facility for each day that the violation continues. And then temporary manager is also included, and it has the reference. This has been used, I know of, in nursing homes because maybe the old administrator or manager left the facility. They retired after a long time, and there was nobody in the area that was really knowledgeable enough or qualified enough to take on the care that those patients needed. So a temporary manager had been appointed. State licensure penalties. Okay, this is 63-1, 1916.1. For non-IHAs, it can be recommended for $50 a day all the way up to $3,050 per day. For IHAs, IJs can be anywhere from $3,050 a day to $10,000 per day. For facilities not participating in Medicare or Medicaid, the overall penalty is limited to a maximum of $10,000 a day. But if they are participating in one of those, you do have the possibility of that being raised, because I know at one point they have to raise the minimums to meet the changes fiscally as to what Medicaid and Medicare were paying out. That hadn't been changed in like years and years and years until recently. Appeal right. Appeal for termination goes to the Oklahoma Health Care Authority. They're the folks you have the contract with. They're the ones that are going to cancel it if you do not bring your conditions of participation into compliance. Appeal for licensure action goes to the Oklahoma State Department of Health. And the address deadline to request appeal is going to be on the enforcement letter or the notification letter from the respective agency. Contact information. This is my supervisor, LaKenya. So she is a good contact information. If she doesn't know, we'll find out. And then here's mine and our direct numbers. And then Katie down here, just so you know, guys, out there everywhere, we split the alphabet, Katie and I, now that I've got somebody else working with me. We split the alphabet. So for any kind of certain type of facility, she has usually the M's. I think I have for nurse ICF facilities, I have A through MC, I believe. And she has MC through the rest of the alphabet, but I have A through most of the MCs, I guess I should say. Okay, so anybody have any questions about that? For ICF? One moment. Okay. You're going to see a handout also in your packet. It's the ICF IID regulations using the tag identifiers. Okay, so this was a requested document from a previous class that we put together. We have these, tag listings for the nursing homes. I provided those for you in an earlier class. These right here are the ones for the ICFs. And what you're going to see is the ones identified in the yellow highlighting. If you printed a color copy, it says shading indicates tags reviewed during fundamental surveys. That means when they go out for standard surveys, when they're not just looking at a complaint, they're looking specifically at these tags. Do you have any questions about that? One thing that I would recommend doing, you've got these in yellow, you might go through with a blue or pink or an orange and identify your conditions, or even with a star next to them, and identify your conditions of participation on your sheet. That way you kind of have that added into the cheat sheet. okay? Does anybody have any questions about ICF IDs before we proceed with assisted livings? Okay. Let's see. Assisted living enforcement. It's a little bit different. I did provide you a assisted living matrix tool, just like a scope and severity grid. I know I've called them that before. So that tool is very handy if you're an administrator of an assisted living, or if you're in a continuum of care that has, you know, assisted living and a nursing home care. You're using assisted livings are going to be surveyed a little bit different, and they're going to also have different enforcement penalties as well. So assisted living enforcement, the authority for a continuum of care and assisted comes from the Continuum of Care and the Assisted Living Act. Ooh, it's going fast. And it's, excuse me, Oklahoma State Statute 63, Section 1 through 890.6. Possible penalties for violation can be a ban on admissions, deny, suspend, refuse to renew or revoke a license. Administrative penalties will be up to $500 per day, and that's generally per deficiency. Assisted livings and ICFs for that matter, we write the legal referral to the Oklahoma General Counsel, and then they pursue it based on the data, what that recommended penalty is. Administrative penalty up to $500 per day. For a continuum of care facility with a nursing home portion, it is possible to apply penalties under the Nursing Home Care Act. It's never been done here in Oklahoma, but it is possible. How penalties are imposed? It comes from the Administrative Practices Act. There's that reference. It requires imposition by an administrative law judge following a hearing. Frequently settled through mutual agreement before the hearing. The settlement is finalized then by the administrative law judge. Most common penalty is the civil money penalty, which is what we call a CMP or a fine. How CMP is determined. You're given the opportunity to correct the deficiencies before the penalties are imposed, unless surveyors find neglect, abuse, or harm to residents. Now, if you look at the scope and severity grid that I provided, harm is going to be anything that is G or above. So it's going to be on the third row or fourth row of that matrix or scope and severity grid for assisted living. No opportunity to correct deficiencies before penalties are imposed for cases involving neglect, abuse, harm, or immediate and serious threat to resident health and safety. Potential fine for opportunity to correct cases starts at $30 a day if the facility is not in compliance on the first revisit. So let me explain that. You've been cited C 911, and it was cited at scope and severity E. So that's minimal, like a minimum potential for harm at a pattern. So, or a pattern for minimum. Okay, so that's at an E. When we first issue the enforcement letter, that is not when the penalty starts. You have an opportunity to correct it before we come and do our revisit. However, if you are not in compliance on the revisit or your tag 911 that was cited at E, you're still out of compliance with it. So at that time, we will issue, or we will start a legal referral because you've been out of compliance since way back at the original date of the survey. And so on that legal referral for your penalty, we go all the way back to the beginning when it was cited, because you now have that opportunity to correct it, but you didn't get it fixed before the revisit.
So that's the revisit?
Yeah, this is at the revisit. So we come out, maybe it's even gone down to a D, but it's still not corrected. It's gonna start all the way back. Let's say it started on 112, and we just came back today and we're still out of compliance. So when I work up that legal referral, I'm starting that $30 penalty way back on 112/21 when we first cited it, because you're still not in compliance at the revisit of today. Okay, and so then you've got to correct it, of course, before that next revisit. It's going to require another plan of correction and all that good stuff. So it's really important that you're getting those deficiencies corrected, and that you're monitoring that they stay corrected. So you can clear those deficiencies and get them, all the way corrected and in substantial compliance on that revisit, so you don't start penalties on it. Now this is on assisted living, okay? $30 a day with no harm, but potential for minimum harm when continued non-compliance is occurring. That's on that revisit that we're citing it, okay? Now, on the other hand, you can have $100 a day fine for isolated harm. Now, this is on this can be on the first survey. It can be on any survey, actually. So we go in, and there was isolated harm, which is on your scope and severity grid. It's the first one on that third row. So it's a G. So the penalty amount is right down in the corner, and it starts at $100 a day. Had harm to someone. It can be $200 a day for a pattern of harm. So that's scope and severity H. And $500 a day for immediate and serious threat to health and safety. So that's those IJs that are on the very top row, JKL. Okay. How the CMP is determined. The penalty will remain in place until the facility is in compliance with all requirements, but it may be reduced or increased following the next visit, depending on what the surveyors find. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example, see if you can follow along. On January 12th, we said our survey was. We went in and we cited, let's say C911, and I think that's the nurse tag, something about the nurse. Let's say the nurse wasn't performing wound care to somebody according to the doctor's orders. I'm just pulling one out randomly. So, okay, and I may be wrong about that. I might be thinking of a different tag set. Guys, just follow me. Okay, let's say whatever the tag was, the nurse wasn't following the wound care orders for this blister or something. And so there was harm to the resident because they had developed a severe wound with an infection. We cited that at a G, which required that, which comes into play that $100 penalty. So on one, let's say the survey was 112, but the survey has been there a few days, at that point. So maybe they first documented that they saw that, and in their findings it says it started on 1/9. Okay, so that $100 a day might go start on 1/9. Now, when we come back for the revisit, let's say we went back for the revisit in February 24th, quick turnaround. And on that day, they say, yes, it's not corrected all the way, but they lowered that to a D. So that means from 1/9 all the way to February 23rd, because on the 24th it's been lowered, that $100 a day penalty works. It goes all those days, but on 1/24, it gets lowered to the $30 a day until it is in compliance. Now, depending on how well facility monitors and corrects, then that deficiency can go up or down on that scope and severity level, depending on how it affects that resident. So it can be reduced or increased the following visit, depending on what surveyors find at that time. The penalty will end when the surveyors determine compliance, not necessarily the date of the revisit. So yesterday I was working one, and the survey date, it was the final visit, and they put them in compliance, I just received it yesterday. But it was a March the 3rd survey revisit that they put this facility in compliance. But the compliance date went all the way back to December. So they came in compliance in December, but the survey revisit wasn't until March 3rd. And that can happen. That's got a lot to do with what you say in your plan of correction, and if you actually correct all those things in due diligence before that time. And surveys come in, they find that it's still corrected. Okay, so they're going to backtrack to when you said it was going to be corrected, make sure it was corrected by that time, and then give the actual correction date. Are there questions? I know this is confusing. I don't think I usually start with this one, but I think I might have missed it. Are there any questions? Okay, I have put our information on here again, and if you do have questions, definitely email us a question, or if you don't have a question until it happens, that's very well the case many times, you can call us at that time. On the last letter for assisted livings, it will, and any letters for that matter, it will not tell you what your penalty amounts are. That's what's different about nursing homes and assisted livings. Although we don't give you the amounts in the letter anymore, at least for nursing homes, Medicare facilities, CMS sends a notice to the facility and tells you what those money penalties are. You will not know that until this goes through the legal process many times. And just know that the thing, all of the legals that occurred in, I guess, the end of 2019 to 2020, that everything got put on hold back in March of last year. And so a lot of that was tabled. Legal is up and going again. And so they will be doing a few backlogs, but there wasn't actually as many as we thought because enforcement for assisted livings was kind of put on hold too, unless there was major issues. So if you work for an assisted living and you know harm or IJs occurred during 2020, I would think that you're going to be contacted pretty soon regarding those penalties and everything and possible settlements from the legal department. Okay, so I'm going to go over some more information about, and some of this might be repetitive, but that doesn't mean, it's probably, if it's repetitive, it's probably for a reason, okay? Assisted living, plans of correction, CMPs, and regulations. I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm cutting down on time today. Efforts to reduce CMPs and duration of noncompliance and increase quality of care. The tools for assisting the center to develop comprehensive POC that's likely to be acceptable at the first submission would eliminate time wasted on rejecting POCs, thereby resulting in timely revisits. In addition, improved POCs are more likely to ensure the center achieves and sustains compliance. So POCs and doing your submitting your POC appropriately was something that a group of people got together, and the assisted living folks got together and they recommended these things, and it became a practice in Oklahoma. So efforts to reduce CMPs and duration of noncompliance and increase quality of care continued. To this end, the following tools were developed: an optional format for submitting POCs, because on the 2567s that we were sending out, lots of people were struggling with getting everything into the second column, and they were like, let's have an easier way. So assisted living came up with an optional format for submitting the POCs. I have some of those on here. Instructions for the optional POC, so how to do it. And customer feedback for comments and questions that arise as you are using the optional POC. And a checklist to avoid a rejected plan of correction. Now, all of those forms are available on the state site, right there. However, when you have deficiencies for an assisted living, we will send you the first 3 automatically with your deficiencies. We're going to give you those tools so that you can just automatically click into the form and start editing that optional format with your tags, because it has every little thing that you need to fill out to submit that POC for that deficiency. So if you have multiple deficiencies, you're going to want to use the same form and create, let's say you have 3 tags, you're going to need 3 of those completed, 1 for each deficiency. When you go to the website, on the left side, click on Protective Health. and click on the right side long-term care, and then back to the left side menu for long-term care forms. Okay, so this is what the optional correction template looks like. Now, I have included all three of those, the assisted living, the optional template, the how-to, and the feedback form, I believe, in your attachments, your slides, your documents. So you should have all of those available. Now, what you'll notice at the top, it says the current date, facility name, and so on. And at the bottom of that first box, that first good box of things, date survey completed, make sure that's on there, as well as your tag prefix, your ID prefix tag. That's what tag it was that you were cited. You're going to need to fill in all of these boxes that have the gray writing on the right side. Now, the parts that are down here that say OSDH response, element accepted, yes or no, that is not for you. You should leave this blank. The surveyors are going to review this form that you send in, and they're going to check mark it appropriately as they're reviewing it. At the bottom, what you need to make sure, and I see, we try to catch these and let people know ahead of time, but every once in a while, one slips through, and so we get it as a rejection for this reason. Number 5, on what date will corrective action be completed? This is your POC date. This is the date you're alleging that you will be in compliance by. That date needs to be filled in. Without it, it's not a complete POC, and you'll probably get a notification from our enforcement support staff, Temple, telling you you had an incomplete POC and you need to resubmit it. And that just drags the process out. So make sure you're completing all of the pieces of that. Again, sign it at the bottom, right underneath that, and have a date of signature as well. Those 3 things are important. Okay, possible penalties for violation. We've talked about a lot of that. I'm not going to rehash this a lot. Factors that contribute to CMPs, however, well, negative outcomes to residents, or in rare cases, the likelihood or potential for serious negative outcomes. On surveys, you're going to either be given an opportunity to correct the deficiencies before we're going to start recommending money penalties or any other kind of thing, or you're going to be given a no opportunity to correct. So no opportunity to correct for assisted living is all tags cited at scope and severity G and above. Opportunity to correct is everything that is F and below. Again, continuing non-compliance, this is when we come back for the revisit and the tag is not corrected. Okay? Deficiency is not corrected, therefore the penalty continues until it is. Or in the cases that are opportunity to correct, the penalty starts way back at the first survey. Factors that affect duration and or amounts of CMPs, the penalty remains in place until the facility is in compliance with all requirements. It may be reduced or increased following the next visit, depending on what the surveyors find at that time. And the penalty will end when the surveyors determine compliance, not necessarily the date of the revisit. You can file an informal dispute resolution and follow that process for assisted living centers. This became effective in November 2013. informal dispute resolution process for assisted living. And that's what I just said. There's going to be an IDR, some IDR information on your enforcement letter. So make sure that when you're reading it, that you're seeing what that information is. And you can always go online to our website and get the appropriate form for that. Is there any questions? Send them to LaKenya first, so let them give them to us for our facility. But you can always call me as well. If I don't know, I can find. Okay, so this is the form that I was talking about earlier. So this is an editable version that is on there. So it's handy because you can go in and kind of try out, play around with it a little bit. So there are some things that you do need to pay attention to. I think number 4 is a good one. How will the assisted living center monitor its performance to make sure corrections are sustained? How will the correction be evaluated for effectiveness? How will the correction be incorporated into the center's quality assurance program? And how monitoring records will be kept to evidence the correction. It's not enough to correct it. You have to continue to monitor that it stays corrected, and you also have to maintain records that you've monitored as well. So what's great about this form is it basically breaks down how to do a plan of correction for assisted living. Okay, this is the instructional sheet for the optional plan of correction template. So it has all the general information with step-by-step instructions available as you work through the process. And here is an example of somebody filling in the 2567 for this sheet. They say the center may choose to insert a disclosure statement here. Some of them do. Refer to optional correction template, blah, blah, blah. And then they just attach this with the template when they send it in. Some of them just send the templates. As long as it's actually all the tags, I don't think there's been a problem with that, as long as the center is remembering to address all the tags cited. And the important thing is the administrator needs to sign the bottom of it, date it. Because those are kept for record. Okay, let's see here. There's more. Okay. Real quickly, does anybody have any questions out there? Because we're kind of going over this a little bit quickly today, so we can fit as much in an hour as possible. Okay, so we're going to briefly talk about special focus facilities. I am not a pro at this, but I'm going to give you basic information in case any of your facilities get chosen to be a special focus facility in the future. And what I mean by special focus facilities, we're going to shift gears right now because we're going back to nursing homes. So we've talked about ICFs a little bit. We've talked about assisted livings a little bit. And we're going to switch gears to specialized focus facilities, which are nursing homes. Real quickly, just so you guys know, long-term care enforcement, we have all of the, let's see, Title 18 nursing homes, Title 18 and 19, so Medicare, Medicaid, they've got both, and Title 19, so Medicaid, excuse me, nursing facilities, and ICFIDs, and assisted livings, adult daycare centers, res care centers, and the veteran centers. So we're going to be sending out the enforcement and the surveys for all of those centers, all of those facilities in the state. But a specialized focus facility there's only 2 of them in the state at a time, first of all. So what are they? The specialized focus facility program focuses on nursing homes that have a persistent record of poor care. Although such facilities sometimes improve enough to achieve substantial compliance on one survey, they frequently manifested many problems on a subsequent survey, often for the same similar deficiencies as a previous survey. So how would a facility become chosen as a special focus facility? Well, there's initial selection of the special focus facility. Each state survey agency selects new SFFs from a list of candidates that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services supplies. So we don't just put everybody, like say, oh, these people are not doing good, these people are not doing. Actually, CMS sends us that list. Oklahoma's candidate list is comprised of 10 facilities at a time. And there are 2 required special focus facility slots. The state agency makes a recommendation as to which of the candidates on the special focus facility list should be selected for the program. And CMS regional office provides the final approval on that. If chosen as a special focus facility, the state agency will notify the provider in writing of their special focus facility selection and conduct a meeting with the nursing home accountable parties in CMS regional office. Okay. Can the selection be appealed? No. Your selection cannot be appealed for this. However, you have the right to informal dispute resolution and independent informal dispute resolution, as allowed by law. Excuse me. And to appeal the noncompliance that led to an enforcement remedy to an administrative law judge of the Department of Health and Human Services Departmental Appeals Board. Specific requirements for requesting a formal hearing are contained in the notice of imposition of the remedy. So that means on enforcement notices, when you've been cited things and you don't agree with them, you have that option provided, and it gives all that information about filing an appeal in the letter. What does this mean for a facility? Well, if you are chosen as a special focus facility, what it means is progressive enforcement. While a nursing home is in the special focus facility program, the state agency will survey the facility at least once every 6 months, as required by law, by the regs. And must recommend progressively stronger enforcement actions in the event of a continued failure to meet the requirements for participation with the Medicare and Medicaid programs. So you're getting surveyed every 6 months, and you're going to see some remedies imposed for at a more, let's say, so like, for example, usually life safety, you're not going to have penalties unless it's like G and above. I think it moves down to F for this one. And then you're going to see some differences in the health citations also. But I'm not going to give you all that information because you will be on overload. And until you are chosen as a special focus facility, you're not going to remember the majority of it because I can't. I have to read it every time. So, how does a facility get removed from the special focus program? They have to graduate from the special focus program. Okay? So graduation. Once a special focus facility has completed two consecutive standard surveys with no deficiencies cited at scope and severity of F or greater, and has had no complaint surveys with deficiencies of F or greater in between those two surveys, the facility will graduate from the special focus program. So you've got to have two surveys with nothing over an F, okay? And like I said, the survey is like every 6 months. Here's the thing, you're gonna have, if you've got a survey and it takes you 6 months to get in compliance, you get in compliance, you're gonna probably have another survey. Because there's a 6-month termination when you have an enforcement case as it is. So you have 6 months to get everything into compliance, and at that point, you're looking at another survey if you're a special focus facility. So the process goes fast. The two that are in the program right now, theirs have been a little bit longer because COVID happened, and there were no standard surveys going on for a long time because of nobody being in getting in the buildings and stuff like that. So those surveys are up and going again. If you need additional information, want more specifics about the program, there's a link there, and you can look that up. It's a survey and certification letter that was done previously, and it outlines the whole program with all the updates at that time. So, are there any questions out there? Are any of you guys working in special focus facilities to your knowledge? Okay. Well, this is something that people ask about a lot, so we kind of put this little document together to briefly cover it because there's so much information that goes into this. But people always ask about the special focus facilities, and most of the time the response is until you're in the process of being a special focus facility, you're not going to understand the ins and outs of it as much. So, yeah, so after somebody graduates from the program, somebody else off the list is chosen. Okay? Okay, well, if anybody has any questions, you guys have our contact information, and you feel free to contact us with any questions you might have. Well, thank you, and I guess I'm going to go ahead and log off of here, and I'm sure you're going to have somebody else on here soon.